Hey, I've tried for the longest time to avoid doing this idea for my channel because of how popular it already is. I try to do what ifs that either I think of myself or ones that I rarely see getting done, but I think everyone has wondered the same thing when they first saw this episode. Whether you liked the move of Harold rigging the votes or felt like it was completely broken and unfair, you probably wondered, why did he rig out Courtney instead of Duncan? And I'm no different. This is a question that's been bubbling deep inside me ever since I first saw this episode, and I've tried to think of why Harold would possibly do this, and quite frankly, I'm still stumped. I've considered that he wanted to hurt Duncan and see the follow-through on his pain after eliminating his love interest, but Harold doesn't really care after this episode. Granted, he only has one more episode, but he doesn't taunt Duncan or take joy in seeing him bothered. He just basically kind of moves on, which is really weird. The only strong answer that I can ever lean to for this move is, well, plot convenience. So it feels like a reasonable and interesting change to make, asking what if Harold rigged the votes on Duncan instead of Courtney. This first episode, yeah, I don't have much to say. Harold would rig the votes on Duncan and he would get eliminated instead of Courtney. Duncan would be stunned, trying to demand to know why they voted him, and the team like DJ and Jeff insist that they didn't, but Chris doesn't listen to any of it as he and Chef drag Duncan out to the boat of losers. Courtney runs to the dock to say goodbye to Duncan, and Duncan, like the original, except from the boat this time, throws Courtney a wooden skull he carved for her to remember him by. Chris would fly a plane to the ground near the cabins, loudly waking up all the campers early for the challenge. For some reason, Duncan oddly didn't really care that much or think about how Courtney got eliminated in this episode, but since Courtney, as we see in later seasons, is pretty obsessive and numbers driven, I see her stressing over how this is possible a lot more. Bridget wakes up from the loud noises, annoyed. Courtney is barely bothered by it, as Bridget looks at her shocked, noticing Courtney impatiently tapping a pencil in front of a desk and bags around her eyes. Bridget asks if she's alright, and Courtney tells her far from it. Their team is full of traitors. Traitors that voted out Duncan last night, and they have to get to the bottom of it. Bridget places a hand on her shoulder, worried for her, saying she knows she misses Duncan, but don't you think this is a bit extreme? Courtney gasps, telling her to not boil this down to some pathetic lover story. She's not Juliet, and Duncan was definitely no Romeo. This is bigger than just Duncan. Their team isn't safe. And according to her numbers, the guys must have turned on Duncan last night, which means they're all worthless nobodies now. Bridget, hearing Courtney dunk on the guys, especially because she likes Jeff, is quick to defend them, saying there's no way they would have done that. Courtney shoves the paper of her charts in her face, telling her numbers don't lie. Bridget pushes the paper away and tells Courtney that she'll talk with them today to help her get to the bottom of this because they're friends, but urges Courtney to take it easy. Courtney agrees, and Bridget joins the cast outside to Chris explaining today's challenge theme of extreme. When Bridget leaves, Courtney eyes the wooden skull Duncan gave her last night on her desk and smiles, pocketing it and walking out herself. The first challenge of skydiving goes the same because DJ and Trent are still here for their teams to compete in it. Gwen and Bridget would also still find the love poem and get into the argument about which of their love interests voted for them. During the challenge, while Team Bass is pulling out the pull-out couch for DJ to land on, Bridget would still try to lightly probe Jeff about the written word to see if he wrote the poem. But Jeff says yeah like a tattoo and mentions the one on his ass. Courtney has a confessional saying getting the guys to talk about any classless tattoos is not an effective way to find out if they are traitors. Courtney yawns as she rests her head on the confessional wall, clearly tired from not sleeping last night, and says she'll remain patient with Bridget. The second challenge with Jeff and Lashana on the moose ride goes the exact same, as Jeff would still show his butt tattoo to Bridget and get a not great time. Gwen and Bridget realize neither of their guys made the love poem and make up, agreeing to work together to find out who made it and who it's for. This leads to Bridget asking DJ before the third challenge if he's written any poems lately. DJ asks back if she's asked any arbitrary questions lately, quickly ending their discussion as Bridget realizes he isn't the one. Courtney watches their conversation from afar and mumbles to herself annoyed at their short conversation, feeling like Bridget couldn't have gotten anything from that. Courtney, being too annoyed and determined to let it go, walks up to DJ during Lindsay's ski riding turn in the third challenge, asking what Bridget talked to him about. DJ asks if she's nosy much, but seeing her baggy eyes and determined look, realizes this is serious to her and tells her she just asked if he's written poetry lately. Courtney has a confessional exacerbated, saying, "Poetry? What is Bridget doing?" It's as if she's trying to accomplish nothing. Courtney gasps as she hypothesizes if that's what Bridget is trying to do. The confessional cuts and Courtney is now seeing the chart she's made. Originally she thought the three guys, DJ, Jeff, and Harold voted out Duncan. She put Bridget on the safe side because she thought they were friends, but with how little she's making an effort to uncover the truth and how quick she was to defend the guys, it's possible that she worked with Jeff and Harold to vote out Duncan. The challenge ends the same way, with Lindsay winning for the Gophers because Harold got distracted by... yeah. After the challenge, Bridget arranges for a team meeting excluding Harold as she talks to the guys asking if they voted Duncan last round. Both DJ and Jeff earnestly say they didn't and they were tight with him. DJ does wonder how it's possible Duncan got eliminated. Bridget shrugs her shoulders unsure, but says it doesn't matter now and they have to continue forward. Bridget places an arm over Courtney's shoulders, asking her if hearing it from their mouths eases her worries, and Courtney says it does and thanks Bridget while hugging her. Courtney has another confessional noting the signs even more. How Bridget was so dismissive of DJ's question about how it could have happened, and how Jeff is totally overstating how close he was with Duncan. Courtney rants she's done mock trial before and she can see it in their eyes. This is clearly the start of a crazed sleep-deprived rant, ending with her noticing how crazy she might look on TV, and says anyone who thinks she's crazy is right. She's crazy, crazy smart. She yawns and falls asleep again, this time falling forwards into the camera. I don't believe the vote here really changes at all, even if Courtney did take a shot at Jeff or Bridget, which I don't think she would, because she'd be aware it's too early and still want Harold gone because he was involved in the vote anyways to her. Harold has the same elimination, confessing love for Lashana, and getting a kiss before he rides the boat of losers. The next episode will begin with Chris announcing to the cast during breakfast that they are at the merge section of the game and today's challenge is non-elimination and a battle of the sexes. When the teams leave the cafeteria to go to their new cabins, Heather would follow Courtney and compliment her on her hair. Gwen would come up after and warn Courtney of Heather, making Courtney start to see the divide with the girls. Bridget stumbles out her cabin door and runs into Jeff. While they are having a moment, Courtney glares at Bridget and grabs her arm, saying they have no time to lose meeting the girls. Courtney has a confessional saying she still doesn't trust Bridget after her fishy behavior yesterday, but being a CIT taught her the great ability to work with anyone. And with the cast being separated into girls v boys, it's important they get a good read on the other team's girls and get on the same page. Courtney relays this to Bridget, saying they have to be careful being the new girls, and Bridget asks if this is really necessary, not believing in the stereotypes of girls being catty and dramatic. Courtney and Bridget walk into the female cabin, seeing Heather and Lashana in a heated argument, stemming from Heather eating some of Lashana's food. Courtney gives a look to Bridget, making her understand. When Heather notices them, she instantly acts nice and accommodating and gives them a tour. She tries to get Bridget to bunk with her, but Courtney pulls on Bridget's arm, saying they'd hate to interfere if their already established dynamic. Herself and Bridget would bunk together. Heather shoots a glare at Courtney as Lindsay discusses how they must be getting along much better than the guys. Just then, Jeff can be heard releasing an ungodly loud burp to the guys cheering. Courtney, hearing their commotion, tells the girls she'll be right back as she leaves the cabin to spy on the guys through their window. She sees them getting along much better than the girls and appoint Jeff as their captain for burping loudly. Courtney has a confessional, disgusted but also worried about how well the guys gel together. The girls have the numbers right now, so it wouldn't be bad if they could vote together in the merge to get rid of a guy, preferably Jeff because she thinks he's still connected with Bridget on the Duncan vote, and if he goes then Bridget won't have any strong allies to protect her. While Courtney does the spying, Heather continues to try and butter up Bridget, leading to Gwen and Lashana telling Bridget that Heather is being phony and to not trust her. Courtney comes back to Heather creating a tape line in the cabin and asking the new girls to pick a side. Courtney mumbles under her breath, so much for a girls' alliance. When Heather prompts them to pick a side, Courtney whispers to Bridget they should both pick one side each so they can try bridging them together. And Bridget agrees with Courtney taking Heather's side because she doesn't trust her or Bridget, and Bridget taking Gwen and Lashana's side. The challenge starts and the first dish of meat balls goes the same. The boys struggle too much at the idea of eating them, as does Bridget because she's vegetarian. Courtney whispers to her that they need this reward to bring the girls together, but Bridget still can't bring herself to do it until Jeff goes over to talk with her and says that sometimes they castrate bulls for medical reasons, making her feel better about the idea. Courtney glares at Jeff for being able to convince Bridget when she couldn't, and the girls win the first point. Duncan isn't here on the boys' side to argue with Jeff about helping out Bridget, and I don't see any of the other guys calling him out on it because they're all pretty nice and were preoccupied during the eating. This would lead to Courtney having a confessional, baffled that none of the guys even called out Jeff for helping the enemy team, pointing as this being another reason that he has to go. The second meal, which was like pizza but with weird seafood stuff and live grasshoppers on it, goes the same as the original, with Bridget helping Lindsay eat the slice of vegetation, Trent getting DJ and Jeff to hold him and feed him the slice, and Lashana unable to finish her slice, and I also didn't see Courtney being able to, giving the boys this point. The third meal of warm spaghetti is quickly won by the boys by using blindfolds and clothespins on their nose to eat the meal without tasting or thinking about it. And the fourth meal of nasty ass soup of like toenails and shit is won by the girls with Bridget using a funnel to pour the entire soup down Lindsay's mouth, and she doesn't taste it. There's a quick cut of many meals after this, but I can't reassess how all of them would have gone without Duncan and with Courtney here, so I'm just gonna say at least it's the same tie. Also, I don't know why, but I don't think any of them count for points, because at the end when the boys win the tiebreaker, they only win by 3 points, but they already got 2 points earlier from the meals we already mentioned, so I don't know, I guess those meals didn't count for points. I'm not going to think about it too much. But this would lead to the same final meal of dolphin hot dogs, which DJ and Bridget both abstain from, leading to the face-off between Owen and Lashana, which Owen wins for the guys, giving them the reward. The episode begins with the girls all glaring at each other, clearly having had a terrible time left on the island. Courtney has a confessional saying after losing that challenge and all the barfing associated with this idea of a girls' alliance, she's sure it won't work, fully giving up on the idea. The guys come back from the cruise tighter than ever, as Chris announces the full dissolving of any teams, and everyone is now for themselves. He also introduces back Izzy and Eva into the game. Lashana has a confessional saying, "Great, exactly what this island needed, more crazy girls." I don't really know how Eva would react to Courtney being here. Eva swore vengeance on the Bass team for voting her off, but then proceeded to only have a grudge of Bridget in the original. I do think that Eva would probably have a similar thing, but this time for Courtney because it makes a lot more sense with Courtney being the de facto leader of the Killer Bass. So Eva would demand to have Courtney's bunk bed in the cabin, and originally when she did this with Bridget, Lashana stepped in to have her back, but I don't think she'd do this for Courtney because they aren't as close, and Courtney chose Heather and Lindsay's side when they divided their room with the tape, which I forgot to mention, but yeah, Eva would come and be like, "What's this?" and they'd get rid of that. Speaking of which, I think Courtney would ask for some help from Lindsay and Heather, to which Heather cowers behind Lindsay saying she seems like she's got it handled. And I do think Courtney would manage through, since we see in later seasons that Courtney is very bossy and aggressive herself, so we'd start to see a bit of that here of Eva, even if she is a little bit afraid of her. Gwen and Lindsay would still diffuse the conflict, making Eva say whatever and leave the cabin saying she'll still win. Gwen sighs in relief when she walks away, asking what's wrong with Courtney and if she has a death wish. Courtney continues looking at the door Eva left from, saying she does, just not for herself. The challenge would begin and Heather would whisper to Courtney, saying she's impressed by how she handled Eva. Courtney gives her a fake smile, calling her so sweet, saying she might have even written her obituary herself if Eva did start attacking her. Heather covers for herself, saying she thought she could handle it, and she did. She clearly can give Eva a run for her money, to which Courtney grins, taking the compliment. Courtney would take Duncan's spot on the first dare of the snapping turtles being shot at her, and Courtney, fueled by rage towards Eva and the pride of Heather's compliment, does pretty well avoiding the turtles and growling at the few that latch onto her, making them whimper and leave her alone. After Lindsay does her marshmallow wax with no complaints, Eva would pull on her hair and whisper in her ear to give a punishment to Courtney, with the leeches that she originally gave to Bridget. And Lindsay follows through with this because she's afraid of Eva. Courtney doesn't have anyone like a Jeff here to take the dare for her, so Courtney would have to do it herself. She considers not doing it out of fear, but when she sees Eva's smug face, she submerges herself in the leech tub, determined to beat her. If we were considering full-on action version of Courtney, I do think she could complete this task, and even though we are getting a taste of that, this specific challenge is just way too difficult for me to see her completing. So like Jeff, she would last 9.99999 seconds, but not 10, and be eliminated. Courtney would be extremely angry at Chris for not giving it to her when she was so close, also showing hints of her unbridled rage in later seasons. But for now, she relents and goes back to her chair, which turns into a whatever medieval wooden headlock thingy. The rest of the cast was originally here, with the exception of Jeff getting eliminated in place of Courtney, and I think he would do pretty decently in this challenge, but not enough to win. So the final two still comes down to Eva and Lashana, where Lashana beats her and wins the challenge. And the votes play out the same with Eva having the majority. Chris would still play the voting confessionals, but that doesn't affect much as everyone just shits on Eva. The only thing that could have gotten complicated is if, Courtney voted for Bridget or Jeff this round. But with how much Eva antagonized her, she would be voting Eva anyway, so that wouldn't have a chance of happening. Courtney's voting confessional involves her saying even with the heavy female numbers, Eva is adding too much testosterone to this island. She smirks and giggles, which soon breaks out into excessive laughter, making the cast stare at Courtney confused about her slight insanity. The episode started with Gwen doodling Trent and having a confessional showing how into him she is. Chris explains the challenge to the cast, and everyone picks their clues for their keys. The cast here is identical except for Courtney in place of Duncan, so to keep it simple, she will get his key clue. When Courtney is face to face with the vertical ring of fire surrounding her key, she gets a bit scared and scolds the production team saying this one isn't even challenge related because it's clearly from a circus. She hypes herself up by imagining what Duncan would tell her to do, thinking along the lines of telling her to live a little and he'll find it hot. Given her later acrobatic performance in action during that one spy laser challenge, she could definitely make this jump through the ring, grabbing the key with giddy giggling at the thrill. Besides that, this episode plays out pretty dead on to the original, as I don't really see why Courtney would go talking to people right now. Also, it would be hard for her to find people as they're all doing their challenges. I do think Heather would be annoyed asking where Courtney is when creating the plan for her alliance of, Lindsay and Izzy about breaking up Gwen and Trent, because Courtney is lightly connected to that alliance, but Heather wouldn't have the time to go looking for her, and just does the plan of Lindsay like the original. So the Heather, Gwen, Trent stuff also happens, causing Lashana telling everyone to vote out Trent or Heather for being involved in cheating on Gwen. And when Lashana tells Courtney she'd be extremely supportive, as she can't even begin to imagine how hurt she'd be if Duncan cheated on her, so she's glad to help Gwen out. Foreshadowing. And when Heather still wins invincibility, the vote falls onto Trent, getting him eliminated. Him and Gwen still clear up the confusion after he's voted out, and they wave each other goodbye while Trent rides the boat of losers. The episode begins the same way of Heather and Lindsay and then Lashana and Gwen scenes, both underlining the division of the girls after Heather's malicious ploy in the last episode. Courtney has a confessional saying if the girls were divided before, they are completely shattered at this point. Courtney's patience has run very thin looking at the two traitors that were involved in Duncan's elimination still here, and she wants one of them gone today. But with how divided everyone is, she'll have to think outside the box. Chris explains the hide and seek challenge, and everyone breaks off. With Courtney being as intelligent as she is, I definitely feel like she would go to the cave as a hiding spot first, and the guys would still end up going there too, and it gives Courtney an idea. Noticing how heavily outnumbered the guys are, she figures it would be pretty easy to create an alliance with them. So she plans worrying them, talking about the number disparity of guys to girls, and how they should all be scared. She's willing to help them out because she doesn't want to see any of them go yet, but they have to work together against the rest of the girls. They are a bit hesitant like they were with Duncan, but Courtney uses the same scare tactics as Duncan did, since she's very intense and I could see her resorting to that. This makes some of the guys impressed, but a little scared at how demanding she is. They end up agreeing because the disparity is even larger here, and they can see Courtney's points. Courtney kicks the guys out of the cave, saying it was her spot first. They chuckle about the idea initially, but Courtney glares them down, showing she's serious, instantly causing them to leave. Jeff has a confessional explaining that he feels a bit guilty about creating an alliance for Bridget, but it's fine because he's sure he can convince Courtney to invite her into the alliance because they were all very close on the Bass team. He's gonna give her some space before he asks though because she seems a bit more intense than usual. The challenge will continue as it did in the original, with Jeff finding Heather, Lindsay, and Izzy. At this point, Jeff has now returned to the cave to talk with Courtney. She quickly pulls him into the cave to avoid Jeff potentially seeing him outside of it, asking what he wants. Jeff brings up the idea of inviting Bridget to their alliance, saying it would give them more numbers to control the vote. Courtney covers his mouth with her hand, saying that can't happen. Jeff is confused, mentioning how tight she is with Bridget. Courtney bites back, saying he must know all about being tight with her as well. She says with obvious disdain, believing they were involved in eliminating someone she was close to, but starting to realize she's coming off too aggressive, apologizes and says she gets that he's close with her, and she is too. But they can't work with her because she is the one who has to go today. And Jeff gasps, asking why they would go for her when Heather and the other girls involved in the drama would be easier to get votes on. Courtney says that's exactly why they have to keep them. If Heather goes, then the girls have the chance of working together. They need the drama to stay here so their alliance can work, and Bridget is the master of smashing any sort of drama. Jeff puts up a finger trying to think of a counterpoint, but has nothing. Courtney places a hand on his shoulder, saying she understands what she's asking of him is a lot, but he should at least think about it, for the good of their alliance. Courtney pulls him into a hug and wears a deceitful smirk. Courtney has a confessional saying she isn't sure he'll follow through, but if she could get him to eliminate his crush the way he eliminated Duncan, then that would be cool. The rest of the challenge follows the same way, with Chef finding Bridget, Gwen, Heather turns in DJ and Owen to win invincibility for herself, and then Courtney and Jeff in the cave. During which Chef's looking in the cave, Owen would still accidentally reveal the guy's alliance of Courtney to Gwen, when she simply asks where Courtney might be. And Lashana wins invincibility by being the last to be found and getting to the lifeguard chair. Originally, the 6 girls outside of the alliance talked together, aware of the guy's alliance because Owen spilled it to Gwen. This would still happen with the same 6 girls, just minus Courtney. But a big difference is that originally Bridget is the one who suggested Duncan because she thinks he's rude. But I don't see her doing that to Courtney because even though she's been a bit off lately, Bridget still thinks of her as a friend. Heather would still suggest voting out Owen though because she doesn't trust his friendliness or something, and both Lindsay and Izzy get on this vote. I did consider if she would suggest Courtney because I don't think that Heather would like that Courtney tried to create a new alliance, especially because of her light connection to her own. But Heather, without saying, doesn't have a lot of allies on this island. It's really just Lindsay and kinda Izzy. And if Heather can eliminate one of the boys, then Heather would figure that Courtney would realize trying to work in a different alliance was a bad idea and come crawling back to work with Heather. Also, with Courtney instigating this drama, the spotlight moves off of Heather for a bit, which she would like to do after her big move of Trent. However, Gwen and Lashana are very insistent that Courtney goes for similar reasons to Duncan that she's a clear threat. Bridget would agree with Heather since she doesn't want to vote out Courtney, and this causes the drama between the girls to get even more heated because Lashana scolds Bridget for turning on them for Heather, when herself and Gwen have been nothing but kind to her since she joined the cabin. Bridget tries to explain herself, but Lashana just tells her to leave because she's already said her piece and she's stinking up the cabin steps with more than her skunk smell. Bridget hangs her head and walks away, causing her to see the guys plus Courtney talking on the dock. Originally she didn't talk to them, but I believe that was mostly because it was an all-guys alliance. But now that it clearly isn't guys exclusive of Courtney there, and because she's close to Courtney and got sent away by the other girls, she would go to talk to them. Jeff is really friendly to her, and the other guys are remotely friendly, but do comment on the skunk smell around her. Courtney tries to create an excuse for Bridget to leave, not wanting her to be with the alliance, but Bridget informs her that everyone already knows about their alliance. Courtney, angered, asks the guys who let it slip. Owen whistles inconspicuously, making DJ flick his forehead. Courtney thanks DJ for doing it first, and sighs worried that they'll just get picked off now. Bridget reassures her that she's willing to vote with them, and the girls are still pretty divided. Courtney grins hearing this, thanking Bridget for the help, whispering her name, and telling her that she shouldn't be seen with them. Otherwise the girls will catch on, and sends Bridget away. Jeff asks Courtney what name she told Bridget, and Courtney says it doesn't matter because they're still voting Bridget. The guys are shocked and not liking the idea since she just stuck her neck out to try and help them, but Courtney explains to them that Bridget said the votes are split, and with Bridget voting who she told her to, they have the numbers to get her out this round. She reiterates some of the earlier stuff she said to Jeff about Bridget being a social threat and keeping the girls together, and her outdoor sporty physical experience proving to be a threat. She sticks her hand in the middle, asking if they're in. DJ and Owen follow suit, seeing her reason, but Jeff hesitates, making Courtney remind him they all need a voter to make this work. And Jeff relents, sticking his hand in the center too. This vote is hard to get a read on because it's already confusing in the original. So in the original, the vote is set up to be believed as a 4-3-3 vote, in which half the girls voted Duncan, the other half Gwen, and the 4 guys Bridget. But at the dock, Jeff confesses that he didn't vote Bridget, which wouldn't make this vote possible because it would end up being a 3-way tie. So either Jeff was lying, or he did vote for some random girl like Gwen or something, and then maybe someone like Izzy voted out Bridget instead since she was hesitant about voting out Owen. Either way, since the dynamics of the other 6 fall the same way in their votes, with the only exception being Bridget, who I definitely don't think was a flipper in the original to vote out herself, Bridget would still get eliminated, because either these 3 and Izzy or one of the other girls voted Bridget, giving her 4 votes, or Jeff did vote Bridget and she has 4 votes anyways. Bridget would be completely shocked, standing up saying she thought she was getting along with everyone, and asking if she really stinks that bad. Courtney, not liking how Bridget can't understand why she got eliminated, when she thinks of Bridget as the traitor that eliminated Duncan, raises her voice as she tells Bridget she does stink of lies, explaining how she knows Bridget was responsible for Duncan's elimination, and she thought they were really friends, but she wisened up and served her the revenge she deserves. Everyone gasps at this accusation. Bridget, extremely confused and hurt, starts to plead genuinely with Courtney that she had nothing to do with Duncan, but Courtney holds her nose, telling her the stench of lies are spreading dangerously, and Courtney isn't putting up with them anymore, as she turns and walks to the campfire. Bridget's eyes well up a little as she walks to the dock of shame. The cast meets her with the exception of Courtney, and Jeff, who stays back to scold Courtney, realizing she didn't believe anything she said today and just wanted to find an excuse to eliminate Bridget. Courtney tells Jeff, "Sue me," and walks back to the cabins. Lashana talks to Bridget from a distance due to her smell, that she's sorry for kicking her away earlier and she's gonna miss her. Bridget smiles lightly as she waves back to her and begins walking to the boat, but stops dead in her tracks as she hears Jeff calling out to her and running up behind her. They have the same conversation where Jeff maybe lies to her about voting her. Either way, it's sweet, and they have the same near kiss moment. Jeff would follow through with kissing her this time, as her elimination is way more emotional, and Jeff wouldn't want to add on to the hurt by running away, so he'd power through the smell to kiss her and make her feel better. Keep in mind, this is the same guy that crawled through the septic tank last episode, so he could definitely power through a quick kiss of her. Bridget would feel better and ride the boat of losers, while blowing another kiss to Jeff. Jeff would have a confessional with a goofy smile, excited about kissing Bridget, but then pulls out air freshener and aggressively sprays his mouth, saying at least he'll never forget their first kiss. The episode begins with the cast hearing Jeff's, I don't know, like pained moans, but it's not a moan like that, it's like, "Oh, I miss her, Yeah, they heard that from the confessional booth about missing Bridget. Courtney gets annoyed hearing this and storms towards the confessional booth, telling him to get his head in the game, and if they stick with their alliance, they can make it to the end. Jeff narrows his eyes and pokes at Courtney's shoulder, asking if she really thinks he's still gonna work with her after what she did. Courtney says, "Excuse me," but DJ and Owen walk up as DJ takes Jeff's side, saying what she did to Bridget was downright cruel, and this alliance, at least of her, isn't continuing. Owen says, what they said, but from over here, behind them. Courtney crosses her arms and scoffs, saying they're all too sensitive anyways, and she doesn't need their boy brains interfering with her game. Chris speaks on the loudspeaker and tells the cast to go to the arts and crafts shed, where he explains the challenge of creating your own bicycles. Courtney has a confessional watching the guys get excited at the bike parts, saying losing her male allies right before this isn't great for her because she has no experience in building things. Class presidents lead the morons to do stuff, not do it themselves. But the handbooks are her thing, so she's gonna enjoy seeing their faces when she outmans them. Originally, Gwen was left with a handbook about making bikes, and when Courtney goes to ask it from her, Gwen is snippy, telling her that what she did to Bridget was cold, and mentions how Bridget stuck her neck out for her yesterday after the girls learned about her alliance with the boys. Courtney mocks Gwen with a blah blah blah, telling her the past is the past. Gwen smirks, kicking the manual off a nearby cliff edge, and pats her hands together while walking past a shocked Courtney, telling her that manual is in the past now. Chris stores the bikes, and when Jeff shows off his lowrider with a drawing of Bridget on the front, Courtney gags and sticks her tongue out. Chris then checks on Courtney's bike, and due to her inexperience with building things and not having the manual, it isn't very nice. I do think it would generally be bike-shaped and look like a bike, but it shakes in the wind, showing it's not sturdy at all. Chris tells Courtney he loves it, and when Courtney gets excited asking, "You do?" Chris follows up saying, yeah, it's gonna make a killer wipeout. Chris would explain the next part of the challenge and line up the contestants with each other's bikes. Izzy originally took Lashana on a crazy bike trip during the duration of this episode, and I see no reason that still wouldn't end up happening. So they missed out on the rest of this challenge like the original. Kinda bullshit for an auto-elimination challenge, but whatever. Because Courtney is the only person different on this cast, I'll just make the simple change of giving her the bike that Duncan originally got, which was Lindsay's. She would not be impressed by the horse design, asking what 5-year-old designed this. Lindsay, right next to her, would eagerly raise her hand, and Courtney smirks, saying that checks out. Also, Courtney's bike goes to whoever got Duncan's bike originally, being Owen. And yeah, since the show takes part in fat jokes with him a lot and Courtney's bike is already terribly made, as the contestants are on their bikes at the starting line, Courtney's bike would break under Owen's weight. Chris sighs upset at it breaking before they even start, since he was excited for the crash. He blows the air horn to start the race, annoyed. DJ would still crash on Jeff's bike because he forgot to put in the bolts, leading to Jeff crashing into DJ. As they groan in pain from the wipeout, Jeff notices his drawing of Bridget is altered, giving her long vertical pupils and a long snake-like tongue. Courtney has a confessional, twirling a marker in her fingers, gasping and asking who could have possibly vandalized that drawing. She punctuates the confessional with a delighted giggle. Courtney would enjoy riding Lindsay's bike since it was well made, passing Gwen and drifting a bit to kick up dust behind her into Gwen's eyes. Courtney grins and pets the horse head on the front, calling the bike a good horsey. Heather would also crash into the mains of DJ and Jeff's, meaning only Courtney on Lindsay's bike, Lindsay on Heather's bike, and Gwen on Owen's bike would cross the finish line. If only in those three competing in the final challenge, it goes the same as the original, just without Duncan wiping out the oral slick, but Heather still tricks Lindsay into letting her win, and Lindsay gets eliminated by bullshit of like, oh, you were last to finish because Owen didn't cross the line, so blah. Lindsay still gets to tell off Heather before giving everyone a goodbye at the Dock of Shame. When she gets to Courtney, they kinda just stare at each other since they never really got along, but Courtney sticks her hand out for a handshake, saying she did a good job on her bike. Lindsay accepts the handshake, smiling at Courtney, and rides the boat of losers. The episode begins with the cast watching the end of a scary slasher film. I imagine Courtney wouldn't really care that much for slashers, and I don't think she'd be that scared. Maybe a little freaked out, but I think the most prominent feelings would be ones of sadness. As the slasher film reminds her of Duncan telling the man for a hook campfire story, and in turn reminds her of Duncan. After the movie ends, she tells everyone she's churning in, and heads towards the cabin to privately deal with her sadness. This means she wouldn't be with the cast to find the stuff that Chris planted on the dock to lead them to believe there's a killer on the loose. Heather would think it's all phony and leave the group to shower, and Izzy would drag Owen away from the group to explore, so those three would get separated from the main group. Courtney would have a scene in the female's cabin, placing the skull she got from Duncan on a nightstand and smiling at it. Courtney has a confessional defending herself, saying she isn't one of those clingy, lovey-dovey girls that can't survive without their chosen love. But that stupid slasher film reminded her of Duncan, so she has to deal with this emotional grief as anyone would, planning out the demise of the last member involved in his elimination, Jeff. Even though Courtney is alone, I don't think she would encounter the killer quite yet, as Chef targeted Owen and Izzy first because they are still out in the woods alone, so that's worse than just being alone in a cabin. Instigating the entire chase sequence between them, where Owen attempts to give up Izzy to the killer, but they both end up getting caught anyways. Back at the campfire, Gwen draws out a chart of all the players and is shocked to turn around and see only Lashana at the campfire with her. Lashana explains that DJ went to take a leak and brought Jeff with him. Gwen facepalms, but re-looking and feeling like it's too little to be just them, and that's when she realizes that Courtney is still in the female cabin, completely unaware of the killer. Gwen has a confessional saying Courtney might be rotten, but challenge or not, she doesn't deserve to be cut open in the girls' cabin. They all sleep there and she doesn't want to get messy. Courtney is seen scratching out names on a chart, trying to find a way to get votes against Jeff in future rounds, but struggling vastly due to how much everyone likes him. Gwen knocks on the door, asking Courtney if she's still up. Courtney quickly grabs all her charts and paper, stuffing them under her bed covers, and opens the door to see what Gwen wants. Gwen informs her there's a killer psycho on the loose, and she should come with her. Courtney has a confessional, rolling her eyes, saying this is what an imaginative brain on mindless gore horror films results in. She strokes her chin, noting that Gwen is one of the few people on this island that isn't crazy about Jeff though, so if Courtney goes along with this, then maybe she can secure her vote against Jeff later. The bathroom scene still has Jeff leaving as lookout for DJ when he hears an ice cream truck. DJ screams and eliminates himself, running all the way to the tent when he sees Heather in a towel with a green face mask. When Gwen comes out to check the screaming, Courtney would be with her, and they would get along as they both poke fun at Heather and leave her to make the mistake of taking a shower during a horror film, also getting Heather caught by Chef. Gwen and Courtney head back to the campfire to see Lashana is no longer there. Gwen asks where she is, and Courtney, making a bit of jab at her over active imagination, says unless you believe in invisibility too, not here. Gwen pays the comment no mind, annoyed at no one listening to her, and marks Lashana off the chart. Courtney compliments Gwen's chartings and says maybe she does have a brain on those shoulders, while lying her arm over Gwen in a chummy way. Gwen mutters an awkward thanks while staring at her perturbed. Gwen has a confessional saying that was the scariest thing that happened to her so far. Lashana gets caught by Chef in the mess hall while getting some brownies, and Jeff gets caught by Chef in the woods. Gwen and Courtney are sitting at the campfire, with Courtney continuing to compliment her, saying how they are one and the same, seeing as they both lost their closest allies in Trent and Duncan. Gwen gets really uncomfortable at this point and excuses herself, saying she's gonna go get sandwiches for them. When she leaves, Courtney notices the psycho killer in the dock and realizes Gwen was telling the truth, but seeing the hook hand on him and reminding her of Duncan again, she goes to face him off. Courtney is just about, if not more physical than Duncan, so I can see her beating Chef here in a similar fashion to Duncan. Even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter all that much because Gwen would still get invincibility from being the real killer in the mess hall. Also doesn't matter because DJ would still get eliminated in an auto elimination for performing the worst in the challenge. The episode begins the same way, with Chris trapping the contestants and releasing them to explain the challenge in the mess hall. He would bring them outside the boathouse where everyone would randomly pick their animal to capture from a hat, and everyone who was originally here would still get the same animal, which was Owen getting a chipmunk, Lashana a frog, Gwen a duck, Heather a bear, Jeff a beaver, Izzy a deer, and Courtney would get the raccoon that Duncan originally got. Chris would give everyone 1 minute inside the boathouse to get what they need to capture their animal, and everyone would get the same things, including Courtney, who I also see getting a chainsaw like Duncan, because she would like the chance of using one to chase the thrill, but I also think being as neat as she is, she wouldn't want to touch a raccoon for hands or a trap, though she figures she can use a chainsaw to scare a raccoon into the cage. Once Chris begins the challenge, Courtney stays back to see Heather look through the remains of what was dragged out, desperately looking for something to help her get a bear. Courtney has a confessional talking about how she's getting so close to eliminating Jeff. With DJ eliminated, Jeff lost a strong number, and with the work she's been putting in on Gwen and Izzy, she can feel Jeff's time coming. Unfortunately, Owen and Lashana are still too tired with him, so her only hope is to get Heather to vote for her, and luckily she's in Courtney's favorite position to negotiate with others. Desperate, Courtney walks over to Heather and offers her the deer antler headwear to help attract a bear. Heather scoffs at the terrible idea and asks why Courtney is helping her because her hair isn't green, nor is she looking for a kiss, implying that Courtney only cares about Duncan. Courtney narrows her eyes, annoyed at the comment about Duncan, but continues saying Courtney will scratch her back if she scratches hers in return. Heather says she doesn't like owing favors and she'll manage on her own. Courtney asks her if she's sure, and Heather confirms. But Courtney isn't scared as she says to the camera that a minor bear attack will bring her back. The cast goes off to look for their respective animals, leading to Heather going to a bear cave and getting scared towards the animal cage, where Gwen comes back first with her duck, and Courtney comes shortly after with her raccoon on her head, after she faced a raccoon mech. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna explain. After seeing two people come back with their animals, and Chris reminding everyone of the punishment involving cleaning the restrooms for the last person to come back with their animal, Heather accepts Courtney's help. Courtney explains her plan of wearing the deer costume to get a bear to chase her towards the cage, and Heather, like she was with Duncan, protests profusely, until Courtney reminds her again of the punishment, making Heather scowl as she dresses up. Courtney has a confessional admitting she isn't sure if this will really help her getting a bear, but like Heather would ever wear that in normal circumstances, so Courtney just couldn't resist. Jeff and Lashana get their animals, as Izzy shoots Heather, seeing just her antlers protruding from a bush, making her fall out of a bush with a tranquilizing dart in her ass. Courtney has a confessional, giggling profusely, saying she's just amazed that Izzy could hit such a small target, making her break out into even more laughter. Owen gets his squirrel in the cage, with himself as well, as the challenge ends there. The vote originally is a tad confusing because Gwen and Izzy were the final two, and I'm not really sure where most of the votes fell in the original. Because it's implied that Gwen was catching strays because people were jealous that she won the reward, but I don't know how many votes she got, or if it was just the one vote by Izzy. I lean more to 2 votes of Izzy and Owen, as everyone liked Gwen a good amount, and the only reason I'm even saying Owen is because there's no way he'd vote Izzy. Also, Gwen never even got to eat the rewards, so I doubt many followed through on that, jealousy. It seems odd that Gwen and Lashana didn't vote for Heather at this opportunity, but I buy it only because everyone kept mentioning the finale and Island like it'll be a vote as it was an action, so it makes sense they wouldn't eliminate Heather right now since she isn't afraid of winning a vote. And with that knowledge, there's a fair amount of locked votes I can say, since this round remains pretty true to the original. Heather votes for Izzy, Izzy votes for Gwen, as does Owen, and Lashana votes for Izzy. Jeff and Courtney are kinda question marks. I don't think either would vote for Gwen, as Courtney has been working for her slightly as of last round, and it could be implied that Jeff voted for Gwen in the original, but I personally don't really see it, and if it was possible in the original, Jeff would sooner throw his vote on Courtney in this world for eliminating Bridget, which with the last 2 rounds being auto eliminations, he hasn't had the chance to do. It's likely that Courtney throws her vote on Izzy, realizing her plan won't work because Heather is definitely voting for Izzy, and she doesn't want to split her votes on Jeff because that gives the people out of her alliance more voting power. And Courtney is totally strategic enough to see that. Gwen probably voted for Izzy originally, so it's possible to see that happening again, but with the work Courtney's done on planning ideas about Jeff since the last challenge, and Courtney's original plan to vote for him, which Gwen was a part of, she would likely vote for him. Also because of the reasons she mentions in the next episode about not really liking him that much. Meaning in a 3-2-1-1 vote, Izzy gets eliminated. Gwen watches Jeff eat his marshmallow, confused on how he didn't even at least get bottom 2. Chris informs Heather that she still has to clean the communal restrooms, and Heather mumbles for Courtney to help her. Courtney, not wanting to do that, decides to use her law knowledge to point out that Chris stated clearly that the last person to bring an animal had to clean the restrooms, but Izzy never brought her animal back either. Chris tries to explain they voted her out already, but Courtney rebuttals that there was no set time frame and was left ambiguous upon completion of the other's task, which has not been fulfilled yet as there are 2 who haven't done it. Chris rubs his forehead annoyed, saying it's too late for him to argue about this, so he assigns Chef to clean the bathrooms instead. The episode begins with Chris flying on a helicopter, re-announcing everyone eliminated so far, and talking of how close everyone is to the finale. He also describes today's challenge of being handcuffed to one another, and the cast all have confessionals talking about who they like the least and what's it like to make it so far. Everyone's is the same except for Courtney, who wasn't here originally. Courtney's confessional will be pretty scathing, as she isn't surprised that she's made it this far, but is shocked about the others. She says her biggest strength is her goal orientation, because while the others are wasting times with friends and enemies, she's remaining solely focused on the game. Her intense expression eases a bit as she pulls out the wooden skull from Duncan, showing it to the camera, saying she also has a lucky charm. She waves towards the camera, telling Duncan she misses him, and she tried to carve a gift for him when they meet again, but she shows her bandaged fingertips, giggling, saying she'll leave it to the professional delinquents. Now, originally Duncan was partnered with Lashana because Duncan wasn't getting along with her due to Lashana knowing he was sweet from what Courtney told her about getting DJ another rabbit, but I don't think Lashana and Courtney would be a good pair for just liking each other, as there's not really anything there. They haven't really had many interactions, but assuming that she told Lashana about Bunny in the pre-merge, they must have at least at one point had a decent relationship. I guess you could work the angle of like Lashana not liking this new ruthless persona of Courtney, but I don't think they're nearly close enough for Lashana to care about that. And if you went for something like Duncan where Lashana knew how lovey-dovey Courtney was for Duncan, and there was a heart in her, I don't think Courtney really mind all that much. I think since Duncan's got eliminated, she can be a bit more open about it. She doesn't like being vulnerable, but now that he's eliminated, I don't think she really cares that much about the curtains being opened on that. Besides, Courtney works a lot better being partnered with somebody else for this challenge, that being Owen. Duncan in this confessional talked about how it stinks because he went after Owen, so Courtney would notice the same stench and recognize it as Owen, as she begins to explain everything that she hates about living with someone like him, obviously listing off his his gross nature and mannerisms, but also mentioning how disorganized and sporadic he is, saying someone like him who hasn't worked hard doesn't deserve to win. This pairing also works really well because Heather, who was Owen's original partner, could be partnered with Lashana, which works for obvious reasons. The pairs would be handcuffed and brought to the mess hall, where Chris explains the first challenge and Chef brings out the food. The Jeff and Gwen pair would play out the same with Jeff eating and Gwen feeding. Courtney and Owen would definitely have Owen eating and Courtney feeding, and originally Lashana wanted to eat and Heather wanted to feed, so that works out naturally. Lashana would make a comment when the food comes out about being hungry and saying she'll scarf down because she doubts Heather can fit anything in that tiny body. Heather looks at her annoyed, but smirks saying well the meal does look good, maybe she'd want some cockroaches sprinkled on, referencing the blended cockroaches Lashana drank in the bench of discussing this, making Lashana gag. The challenge goes the same. Gwen and Jeff lose because Jeff takes his time eating, Heather forcefully spoons a lot of food into Lashana's mouth as Lashana did to Duncan originally, but Courtney and Owen win when she pours the entire plate into his mouth. When Chris announces them the winner, Courtney celebrates, even putting her hand up for a high five of Owen, which he smiles and follows through with, but uses the hand handcuffed to Courtney's, so when he swings his hand up, Courtney's hand also flies up and hits her in the face, making her annoyed with him again. Chris explains the second part of the challenge, and the pairs go off to ride their canoes to Boney Island. Lashana and Heather bicker like Duncan on Lashana originally, with Heather complaining about some prank she did recently like replacing her makeup with mud. Lashana smirks, saying it's what witches wear and she should play the part if she's going to treat everyone terribly. Heather retorts that she's just playing the game and she doesn't expect Lashana to understand. Lashana says, oh I understand, you push everyone away and treat everyone the worst way possible because you're afraid of being vulnerable and giving anyone the chance to hurt you first. Heather's expression turns sad as that statement touches on what Harold said to her in the Island special, so it rings true. But she refocuses and tells Lashana it's a cute theory, but there's a reason her hips are larger than her head. Lashana gets angry at her comment as she pulls her arm forward while paddling, making Heather fall forward into the boat floor. All pairs row to the island, where Chris gives them a piece of the Boney Island statue, and explains the next part of the challenge involving one member giving the other a piggyback ride. Owen quickly offers his back to Courtney, which she accepts wanting to win. Heather explains that she wants her spine to still stand straight, implying that Lashana is too heavy, causing Lashana to quickly pounce as they start fighting. Jeff comments on how dysfunctional they are, making Gwen annoyed just wanting to start the challenge, and Jeff quickly offers his back for her to ride, making Gwen pleased. Jeff carries her out to a beach that he wants to take photos of, resulting in them having the same scene of Gwen revealing that she's never been to a party and wishes sometimes that she could have been one of those preppy girls that gets along with everyone. Jeff assures her that he and her are going to go partying when this is all over, making Gwen smile as they continue in the challenge. A spider would still land on Owen's face when he and Courtney get to the cave, making him run away, and Lashana run away when the woolly beavers come out from the cave, allowing Gwen and Jeff to win this part of the challenge. Chris would explain the final challenge of the duos working together to stack wooden heads of all the previously eliminated contestants in the order they were eliminated in. Courtney would be excited hearing this, as with how particular she is, I feel like she would have easily kept track of the elimination order. As Owen and Courtney are stacking, Owen would grab Duncan's head as it's next in line, but Courtney tries to stop him and Owen sees why when he sees Courtney carved a heart with a C plus D in the middle of it. Owen giggles at the sight, lightly teasing Courtney for having a heart, which causes Courtney to blush from embarrassment and says this isn't the time. Heather and Lashana are stacking together, doing decently, but when Heather gets to Beth and Lindsay, she makes fun of them, saying it's no wonder they didn't make it to the final 6, and these wood carvings probably have more brain mass than them put together. Lashana, having a good connection with both Beth and Lindsay, and also just tired of dealing with Heather all day, snaps at these comments, tackling Heather to the ground, slapping her silly and knocking a tooth out. When Courtney and Owen get to Izzy's head, Courtney makes similar scathing remarks about her insanity that Heather did in the original, but Courtney pushes a bit further since she likes sticking it to Owen for what he said about her and Duncan. This makes Owen drag Courtney to Chris, demanding for the wimp key, as Courtney kicks, telling him they can win this, but he doesn't care. I don't see Jeff or Gwen being great at this final challenge, as Gwen didn't build that strong connections or really care for that many people, so I doubt she'd remember everyone, and Jeff is kinda dumb, so I don't think he'd remember everyone. But since the other two pairs are fighting with each other, this gives Gwen and Jeff all the time in the world to figure it out, which I think they eventually would, giving them the win for this challenge, and combined with the second challenge they won, this is enough for them to have invincibility. A lot is altered with the vote out, as Jeff just won invincibility, and he was the original vote out. There are a couple locked votes I'm pretty sure about. First is Heather voting for Lashana, as for similar reasons to Jeff, Lashana is too well liked and would win the final vote. Also, Heather would still be just a little peeved about her missing tooth. Lashana is alluded to in the original to voting Jeff. She has this confessional before the marshmallows are given out, saying something along the lines of, I knew if it came down to a popularity contest, I was going to lose big time. She did also say that she had to vote Heather, but I think that was just a mistake because that quote makes no sense if she voted Heather. Also, I don't see how Jeff would have been eliminated without Lashana's vote vote for him. Despite that, I don't think she would go for another popular threat here, since Lashana is the biggest one without invincibility, and even though she could target like Owen because he's pretty well liked, I don't think Lashana planned on eliminating all of the likable people. Jeff was just a special case because he is very personable. Where Owen is just liked, Jeff is adored. So Lashana would vote Heather because she is still heated after the challenge and finally wants her gone. Courtney, even though she'd be mad at Owen for blowing the challenge, would vote Lashana because she's the biggest social threat, plus her and Heather are still kinda loosely in a connected alliance from last episode, so I could see Heather swaying her on that. The other three are harder to me because there's another clear option they could entertain, obviously looking at Courtney, with Owen being mad at her for her comments about Izzy, and Jeff still wanting her gone because of Bridget. However, Gwen wouldn't vote that way since she is closer to Courtney from likely working with her, but much more importantly, Lashana would definitely tell Gwen about voting out Heather tonight, and Gwen couldn't pass up an opportunity like that. With their newfound friendship and some convincing, I believe Gwen could get Jeff to vote for Heather, insisting that if he votes for Courtney then it will be a three-way tie and that puts Lashana in danger, which Jeff wouldn't want to risk. In a 3-2-1 vote, because I do think Owen would go through on voting Courtney, Heather is eliminated. Heather is infuriated, calling them all idiots for voting out, saying Lashana beats any of them in a vote. Lashana tells Heather she sure doesn't feel too dumb right now, while popping her marshmallow in her mouth. Heather shakes, telling her she will regret what she's done, and she hasn't felt the last of Heather. Chris, getting tired of the tantrum, tells Chef to take her, and he does, dragging her by her ankles all the way to the boat of losers, while she continues making threats to Lashana and Gwen. Lashana ends the episode of confessional, asking the camera if they can hear that. It's silence, and boy is it nice. The episode begins with the eliminated contestants all enjoying their time and play at the losers, and the same scenes playing out. Duncan would have a similar scene to Courtney, where he wants to punish Harold for rigging the votes against him, yelling that you can't hide forever, Dorkahannes, but I believe generally that he would be much more laid back than Courtney and be able to enjoy the resort. Heather would be having a terrible time, still feeling like she deserves to be in the game, even snapping a frisbee in half that some of the contestants are playing with when it accidentally hits her in the head. Courtney's original outburst of being rigged out would be replaced by Heather demanding her justice, to which everyone doesn't care about and tells her she's lucky to have made it as far as she did. The eliminated contestants would first be asked how they feel about Courtney, with the obvious people like Bridget saying she really soured and Bridget can hardly recognize her as a sweet girl from early on. Bridget is too nice to say anything that bad about Courtney, but if she was in the end and needed help, she shouldn't be looking Bridget's way. DJ says a similar thing about her being cruel and seeing everyone as numbers, but does point out that she was a pretty valuable team leader in Bass, remembering when she helped him conquer his fear of snakes. A lot of the contestants pre-merge, like Cody, Sadie, Katie, Beth, and Tyler, have a running joke of telling each other that Courtney was a CIT and acting like it's a huge secret, prompting the show to play out the many moments that Courtney references being a CIT, clearly showing that they think she was a bit annoying and bossy. Duncan would speak on her last, and even though Courtney became unhinged, I don't really think Duncan would care, and might find it hot seeing how free and wild she is. It would be a bit different if she eliminated Jeff because they were pretty close, but Duncan wasn't really that close with Bridget, and even if she misjudged how he was eliminated, he still appreciates someone trying to crack down on how he got voted out. Harold can be heard gulping from a bush from that comment, leading to Duncan finally finding him and beating up Harold. Next, the contestants would talk how they feel about Jeff. It starts off very positive, with Bridget talking about how sweet he was, and telling ladies to take notes, mentioning how he was willing to kiss her with skunk spray on her, and that's a keeper. Guys like Trent, DJ, Duncan, and Cody talk about how he was a fun, lovable spirit, and there was never a dull moment with a guy like him around. But people like Eva pointed out that she was just annoyed by him because he would never learn to shut up, and yeah, he was very annoying. Harold, being by Duncan, also speaks to Jeff, remembering how he helped Duncan in bullying him, saying he was always a bit inconsiderate when conflicted with his interest. And even Bridget comments on that, saying she can't argue with that, the bullying wasn't cool. The comments on the other three go the same as they were all originally in the final five. The only exception is Duncan and Heather's comments on them, but I don't see Duncan having much to say because they were all on the other team, and he only made pre-merge in this world. He might say something about liking Lashana's style, but that's all I can see. Heather, however, would still be very rude, especially towards Lashana, swearing one day, some way, she will get her vengeance on her for getting her eliminated. Night falls, and as everyone talks about who they would vote to win, Chris appears, revealing the power they have tonight in voting out the 5th contestant from the island. Heather gets a smirk on her face as Chris explains his premise, and hearing him ask Katie and Sadie vote first, she gets a plan to exploit them, as she says how much she'd love to have Lashana here, imagining how fun it would be. Some people glare at her, confused why she's saying that, but to their shock, Katie and Sadie both then vote for Lashana with that reasoning. This causes everyone to gasp and accidentally repeatedly say Lashana, as Heather happily says Lashana last, giving the final majority for her to be eliminated. The episode begins with the contestants on their cabin steps noticing the heavy rain, except for Owen, who would be in the confessional booth confessing all the bad things he's ever done. Gwen is pretty down with the rain and missing Lashana, saying her elimination was so unfair. Jeff tries to cheer her up, saying at least the rain isn't devilish small pellets of pain, citing hail as his fear from Propia Factor. The gutters on the girl's cabin breaks, causing water to pour all over Gwen, making her blow the wet hair out of her face and sarcastically exclaim, "Yep, this is perfect." Courtney agrees with Jeff, saying Lashana being eliminated is good for all of their games. Unfair or not, Gwen should stop moping. Gwen doesn't take lightly to this comment, telling Courtney at least she isn't planning the elimination of one of her friends right after someone she likes gets eliminated, referencing Bridget. Jeff cringes as their fighting continues. He tries his best to de-escalate the situation. Being stranded from the rain to his male cabin, is unable to do anything before both slam into respective sides of the female cabin to avoid each other. Courtney has a confessional, saying maybe she could have been nicer about that, but what do you expect? Being a CIT, she has to deal with morons all the time, and she can only be as nice as she has been for so long before it comes boiling out. Owen is heard snickering from outside the confessional outhouse, asking if this has really been her being nice. Courtney kicks the door open while storming back towards the cabins. By morning, the three of Jeff, Gwen, and Courtney all wake up and leave their cabins to find they're in a flood and take refuge in the cabin until they wash up on shore. Gwen, like the original, would panic being on the island, insisting they have to escape. Courtney would take Duncan's role of saying their best bet is to stay put and wait for a rescue team to find them instead of getting themselves more lost. This would respark their aggression pent up from yesterday, having Jeff intervene, saying he agrees they should just stay here to find Owen, and suggest they throw a wicked party while they're waiting to hopefully alleviate the drama. Reminding Gwen of how she wanted to go to a party before, and this can be a practice trial. Gwen is astonished by the idea of having fun and practicing for a party while they are stranded on an island, and is also insulted that he agreed with Courtney given their history. Gwen walks off, saying she'll escape on her own because she doesn't want to waste any resources on helping them. Courtney tells her that she will tell the rescue team she already succumbed to island madness. Jeff, having failed at diffusing the tension, goes off for a beach walk and has a confessional talking about how tense everything has been, and he thought the final four would be like a party, but it's kinda heavy, especially with Owen not around. During Jeff's beach walk, he finds the same island treehouse that Heather did and calls out for the girls to come check it out. He gets scared by the same skeletons that Heather did, as the other two arrive and are also shocked. Owen still goes crazy about being left alone and creates his friend Mr. Coconut. Courtney analyzes that the skeletons are clearly props, and this must be another trick like from the horror movie challenge. Gwen says if this is a challenge, then leaving the island is clearly the way to win, and if it isn't a challenge, then she isn't staying. Courtney and her begin bickering again, making Jeff for once raise his voice, telling them this is a killer treehouse and they are all just cranky from the situation. He delegates tasks, telling Gwen to work on the raft she wants, Courtney to set up the cabin for a party, and he'll collect some grub. He places his arms over them, saying they'll laugh, they'll eat, they'll have some fun for once, and then when they have a good time and full stomachs, they can have the conversation again about riding a raft out of here. Gwen and Courtney are both still a bit annoyed, but seeing Jeff put his foot down, begrudgingly agree to his plan. Jeff comes back with some food after scavenging for a bit, eagerly ready to rebuild connections. He comes to see Courtney snacking on a candy bar, asking where she found it, and she reveals she found a large stash under Owen's covers. Jeff realizes that his bunk did always look a bit lumpy. Gwen says, "You'll share that, right?" Courtney sinks on it, saying she'll delegate what she feels is fair. Gwen rolls her eyes, saying she was certainly an emperor in her past life. Courtney has a confessional delighted, and says that's the nicest thing anyone's ever told her. The three have a party in the treehouse where Jeff is having most of the fun, and the two girls are just stuffing their faces as Gwen wants to be done with this so they can leave on her raft. Jeff is bummed to see them being so resistant, but pulls out a large egg he found to bring up their spirits. Both the girls seem pleased until a loud bird screech can be heard outside. They all stick their heads out the window and notice a large bird circling over their treehouse. Owen is seen moving forward in a crazed man attire with a full beard and Mr. Coconut. The girls both scold Jeff about taking the egg from a massive bird, being sure to whisper so it doesn't hear them. Jeff tells them it isn't a big deal and he will just give it back. He walks out the cabin and holds the egg above his head, calling out for the mama bird to have its child back, insisting they were only thinking about eating it. The bird lands on the roof and makes Jeff lose his balance and drop the egg, to where Owen, who just arrived below the treehouse, grabs it. The bird, seeing Owen with the egg, swings down trying to grab him into the air, but because fat jokes, he wouldn't be taken off the ground, but it would grab on his beard. He lets out some pained noises, but gets the bird off him by throwing Mr. Coconut at its head and catching him as he falls back down. The bird releases and flies away, as the three in the treehouse are amazed to see Owen, especially in this state. Gwen urges that they eat enough food, and she isn't waiting for Mama Bird to put on his gloves for round 2. She begins to scale down the ladder, but like the original, a massive snake falls at the base of the ladder, ladder, making Owen scale it quickly and removing the option for Gwen to go down. The cast argues again in the treehouse, with even Jeff losing hope at this point, annoyed that all the effort he's putting in is going to waste. But Owen, like the original, suggests for them to confess their sins as he did in the confessional booth to clear their mind. With nothing to lose, they all agree and bond a bit during this. Jeff has a confessional admiring Owen's idea, feeling refreshed and at peace with himself. And it might still be tense here, but he has a lot of peeps back home that he has to make happy, so he can't even into the gloomy vibes here just yet. Owen sees smoke and creates the same plan of them acting as headhunters to scare the people there away. And they would do that, where they find Chris, who explains everything to them, and like the original, Mr. Coconut gets eliminated at the campfire ceremony. The episode begins with the contestants waking up in the middle of the woods, where Chef flies in from a helicopter. Apparently happens a lot this season. He explains the challenge while creating the duos of boy v girls. Jeff and Owen high-five, excited to work together, while Gwen and Courtney scowl at each other, neither forgetting about their conflict yesterday. The challenge begins and the guys run off into the woods. Jeff has a confessional speaking on how sweet it's going to be working with Owen, and he sees no world where their good vibes don't beat out the girls. They have chemistry like long-lost brothers. Owen, out of breath, asks where they ran further into the woods, and Jeff explains he wanted to leave before the girls sour their fun. He pours out their bag of supplies to see what they got, and Owen is devastated to see no food. Jeff tells him to relax and they will get some food when they set up camp at nightfall. Owen excitedly asks about all the food he wants, starting off realistic but quickly becoming unattainable for a forest, where Jeff says maybe, but they should take advantage of their early lead. Jeff gives the map to Owen and guesses where the sun rises and sets to take a guess at north. However, Owen disagrees looking at the map, thinking it was the other way around, hinting at the beginning of their intelligence problems. Jeff decides to agree with Owen as they go the wrong direction up the same mountain cliffside. They see the girls and Jeff calls out to them, instead of taunting, just warning them that they are going the wrong way because he's kind enough to not want them to get lost in the woods. But the girls make it clear that they have a compass and they are going north. Jeff quickly grabs the map from Owen to see he's been looking at it upside down. Jeff recollects saying it's fine and they can just jump in the river below to regain the lead. Owen looks off the cliffside saying he doesn't do daredevil dives anymore, terrified at the jump. Jeff, thinking about it, tells Owen they might be able to make some killer sushi if they find fish down there. Jeff explains all the amazing details making Owen's mouth water. Owen has a short moment of clarity, pointing out that Jeff is most likely tugging his arm, but he must jump for the chance of sushi, and dives off the cliff. Jeff cheers for him as he jumps shortly after. Gwen and Courtney sit on some rocks, and Courtney, like Heather, talks with Gwen saying they both don't like each other, and they are on their own if they find that Sasquatch, which she obviously doesn't believe. Gwen points out she's shaking, and Courtney grabs her shaking arm with her other arm, saying it's just cold out here. She continues saying they can't let the boys win, and they should put their differences aside. Gwen agrees, but also adds on that she isn't too worried about the boys, as they were probably off playing limbo or something. The girls chuckle in agreement until they notice a raft on the river with the boys, swiftly pass by them. The next scene would be quick cuts of the girls and boys creating plans to steal each other's stuff. Gwen and Courtney are both very intelligent, but I actually believe that the boys have the advantage here due to Jeff. Because being a party, frat sort of guy, I definitely think he's partaken in hazing, or at the very least pranking his boys, so he would have a lot of experience in doing stuff like this. And even though Gwen and Courtney are smart, I don't think this hands-on approach is particularly either of their strong suits. I don't think the guys would get all their supplies like Duncan did originally, but I do think they would get most of them, including their compass, leaving them with no direction. The girls would see a massive footprint and assume it's the guys trying to trick them, so they act surprised and scared. When they hear a rustling in a nearby bush, Gwen jumps into it, but it arises a Sasquatch with her on its neck. They run and scream, eventually leading them into the boys, who also run and scream with them, all going into the cave. They get terrified when they see the eyes of the Sasquatch and the bats, making them run out the other side. After they all run out tired, Courtney admits defeat, saying with them having both methods of finding their way back to camp, being the map and compass, the girls have no chance of winning, and they're willing to share their supplies, which only consist of food at this point, if they let them sleep in their camp tonight. Owen instantly agrees, wanting more energy bars, and Jeff strokes his chin pondering, but agrees as the boys run ahead to make camp. Gwen is disgusted playing the damsel in distress, asking Courtney what was with that, because she's a lot of things but not a quitter. Courtney tells her to relax and let the boys think they are strong boys, and when morning comes, they'll already be out of here with all their stuff. Gwen smirks, admittedly impressed with Courtney's underhanded idea. Owen asks Jeff if they can trust the girls, and Jeff says he's sure, but just as insurance, he pulls off his hat showing he's keeping a compass underneath. They camp in for the night, and in the morning, Owen wakes up to see all their stuff missing. Jeff stretches, calmly telling Owen no sweat, reminding him of the compass, but Owen points at his head, making Jeff pat it and realize they took his hat and the compass. The girls are seen running in the woods, chuckling with both supply bags, and Courtney wearing Jeff's hat. They both have confessionals, excited about the thrill of pulling that off. Jeff is most heartbroken at losing his hat. Owen is about to tell Jeff about how weak he was giving into his primal urges, before Owen then smells the scent of sticky buns and runs towards the scent. Jeff follows after him, thrilled, telling Owen to trust that sniffer. The challenge ends the same way, with Owen running to the sticky buns first to eat them all, and the girls using the opportunity to touch a totem pole first and win. Jeff isn't as mad at Owen as Duncan was though, seemingly upset at at Owen for not touching the totem pole, but fist bumps him getting the sticky buns. This vote is confusing for me specifically, as the last time I did an Island What If, which was a while ago, but the last time I did an Island What If, I had assumed that Chef decided who would be eliminated between the losing duo, because it's what the wiki said in this episode description. But a lot of people in the comments told me this was a normal voting round, with just the winning duo voting who would go home. I'm not sure about this assessment, and I'll have to think about this round in the future a lot more, but just to make up for last time, I'll have this round be a normal vote out, in which I'm pretty sure Jeff gets eliminated. Courtney is obviously voting for him. Gwen would be hesitant because they are friends, but I'm pretty sure Courtney could convince her that Jeff would beat her in the finale, and Gwen clearly doesn't have a good time on the island and constantly says she's only still in this to win. So with a heavy heart, she would make the move giving her the best chance to win in voting out Jeff. Jeff is bummed but takes his elimination in stride, telling them it was fun and giving a goodbye to everyone on the dock. Owen burps in his face from the sticky buns like he did with Duncan, and Jeff calls it a nice one while smiling. Jeff walks past Courtney, congratulating her on making it this far, with a monotone clearly not meaning it that much. Gwen and him have a nice goodbye, with Gwen even giving him a quick short hug. As Jeff begins to continue walking down the dock, Gwen remembers something and shows him his camera that she threw in the water on Boney Island. She explains that she went back for it after that challenge, and she's been trying to clear the water out before giving it back to him, but she's had no luck. Jeff smiles, saying it just makes it a better souvenir, and pulls her in for a photo together before riding the boat of losers. The episode begins with Courtney and Gwen making a pact to help them win the challenge today to vote off Owen, as they rebuilt their connection yesterday and can admit that they're both their best chances to be in the finale. The final three have confessionals talking about what they would do with the money and what they think of the competition, except for Owen, who just rambles on about the all-you-can-eat pancakes served this morning. The challenge begins, and I've talked about this before, but there's a lot of random chance with the spins and specific dares in this challenge for me to be able to play it out dare by dare. However, I do have at least a general outline for how this challenge would go. It would start off with Courtney and Gwen giving their dares to Owen like they agreed to if they're packed to not let him win, but to their shock, Owen handles all their dares completely fine and starts collecting a lot of freebies. At around Owen's third freebie is when Courtney realizes their plan won't work because Owen is too good at these disgusting challenges, and with the psychopaths in this cast, Courtney's eyes widen as she corrects herself, saying, I mean, creative people in this cast, it's only a matter of time before Owen gets a dangerous dare and gives it to her and eliminates her. It's time for Courtney to start playing for number 1 again. This is when Courtney gets the dare Heather got drinking fruit punch out of a communal restroom toilet. Gwen gags, telling Owen he should get a freebie ready, but to her betrayal, Courtney gives the dare to Gwen, and because she hasn't earned any freebie from giving all her dares to Owen, Gwen is left with no choice but to complete the dare. Courtney feels a bit bad seeing Gwen so disgusted when she comes back, but knowing she already burned that bridge, attempts to rub it in to bring her spirit down, whispering to Gwen that Courtney saw her color, but even a dog wouldn't drink out of those toilets. She giggles, but Gwen releases a disgusting burp of toilet water, making Courtney go wide-eyed from the horrid stench, and sits back in her seat. After this, the gloves are off for dares, as Gwen and Courtney start taking and being given a lot more dares from each other. This goes on for a while before Owen creates a mini army of freebies, leading to Gwen making the same deal with him to share her winnings with him, and if she doesn't win, she'll buy him a box of donuts, making Owen split his freebie connection with her. This leads to Courtney having to do a large number of dares like Heather. It's completely possible that Courtney would give up before Heather, since she was shown to be pretty squeamish with gross things, but to be fair, so was Heather, and Courtney feels about equal in her determination when it comes to Heather, so the challenge ends the same with her getting the haircut by Chef there and kicking the clippers, making them fall back down towards her head, and still getting eliminated through the technicality of not allowing the dare to happen. Courtney is enraged by this elimination and swears to Chris in the show that she will sue them for everything they have. This finale basically plays out the same to me, as we noticeably have the same final two. There would be some minor stuff changed, mostly pertaining to Courtney and wearing a wig. She would come in the peanut gallery of Duncan, behind her shaking his head at Gwen, as Courtney would obviously blame Gwen for this since she was the one who gave her the dare. Jeff would have a confessional, overjoyed at Courtney getting her karma, and bets she wishes she had a stylish hat like his now. Jeff touches his chin while looking at his head sinking and asking if people think he's bald because of the hat. Courtney would taunt Gwen when everyone joins Owen's side after he says a phobic party. And I also think Courtney would come up with a Justin plan to distract her on the plank walk, but Trent diffuses it by grabbing Courtney's wig and sticking it on Justin, making him look less appealing. The cast laughs at Courtney being bald, making her tackle Justin to achieve her rig. But besides all that, the winning endings play out the same. And there you go, that was what if Harold rigged the votes on Duncan instead of Courtney. That what if was admittedly kind of boring because a lot of scenes stayed really true to the original. I did enjoy working with the things I worked with, but I do wish more things could have ended up changing. It's just hard because Islands Merge, there's so many rounds that are like auto-eliminations where certain characters are doomed to fail because they're always in that situation, or mainly Heather, she's responsible for so many eliminations. So as long as Heather is still there and those auto-eliminations are still there, things tend to fall pretty similar no matter what because there's not a lot of factors that would change those things. I did enjoy working with the dynamic of Courtney and Bridget. I'm usually not a big fan of like friends fighting because of a simple misunderstanding sort of plot lines because they're usually really contrived. weird. But I think with Courtney it actually works really well, because there's obviously the one factor that's shown a lot in later seasons and implied in this season, that Courtney is really intense and she doesn't really care for a lot of people because she's super driven. And she tries her best to hide a lot of that on Island, but it is still in her, so it makes sense that she would obsess over like Duncan's elimination and try to find any reasonable conclusion. But another big part of Courtney's character is her lack of trust. She has a lot of lines in later seasons, like in Action when she had her gift from home. It was like a photo of her winning a speech and debate by herself and her saying like, this is why you can only trust yourself, you never rely on anybody else. That's a huge part of Courtney's character. She has a really difficult time trusting people, so I also think it makes sense that she'd be so immediately distrustful of somebody she's given her trust to, like Bridget, because she has a hard time working through that. So with the parts I just mentioned about the Bridget and Courtney stuff, I like being able to ease into this more intense, crazy version of Courtney, because in the original, it's a pretty stark contrast of Island Courtney and then Action Courtney. You don't really have the build-up to make those things happen, and it's definitely a little jarring, and I enjoyed having Courtney kind of ease into those more crazy, intense parts of her character, and like her eliminating Bridget as her friend being the churning point for that, where you can clearly see the shift in Courtney's mindset. Working with Jeff as a character was also a delight, because Jeff is always someone I kind of struggle writing with, because I feel like a lot of characters have at least one season where there's an opportunity for them to have a spotlight in a substantial way, like, you know, Lindsay has Action, Tyler has World Tour. Like, even though those characters wouldn't get a ton of screen time in every season, there are specific seasons where there's opportunity for storylines. Jeff is a character I've always struggled to find fitting in with that, because obviously he's like not in World Tour and he's hardly in Action, and he is on Island for a long time, but most of his storyline is pertaining to Bridget. And even though in this What If it was still mostly pertaining to Bridget, it was also pertaining to his rival with Courtney. It was also adding on to his connection with Gwen being able to stay a bit longer. Even though it wasn't perfect, I enjoyed finally being able to find a way to work him into stuff. Alright, that's all, and bye.